Hi everyone, my name is Brenda and I'm an intern at the WaterWise Community Center. Today I'm going to be taking you on a virtual tour of the Santa Ana River Watershed, more specifically of the stops that we go on for our summer camp. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here, and what you should be seeing is a map of the Santa Ana River Watershed. Now this is a large scale map, and the reason it is called a large scale map is because you can't see very much detail. Now, what we are also seeing here is this red outline. And what this red outline represents are the divides of our watershed. And a divide is the highest point of our watershed. Next, what you see is these blue lines right here. And these blue lines represent tributaries that bring water down, down, down to the trunk stream or the main river of the watershed, and that is the Santa Ana River. So the Santa Ana River goes down the center of the watershed and exits here at Huntington Beach. So let's go to the headwaters of San Antonio Creek first. Now the key word here is headwaters. Headwaters means it is the start of the creek. So right up here by Mount Baldy Resort is where we see the headwaters of San Antonio Creek, as well as the headwaters of other streams, as you can see here. Except they don't start at Mount Baldy Resort. They start at the peaks of other mountainous areas. So we see here that it goes through Mount Baldy Resort. It goes right next to Mount Baldy down its channel. And here's our first stop in our camp, and that is San Antonio Creek. Now, here at San Antonio Creek, you will tend to find cleaner water because there isn't a lot of people surrounding it. There isn't a lot of pollution around it. So you will tend to find clean water and macroinvertebrates that are actually less tolerant to pollution. Because the water is cleaner, certain macroinvertebrates will live here because they don't need to worry about pollution as much. So we can follow the creek down. And as you can see, the closer I get, the smaller the scale of the map. And the reason it's called small scale is because you see a lot more detail. We can see that there's an apartment complex here. We can see that there's this drive-through here. We can see the streets. So this is a smaller scale part of the map. And as we continue to go down and follow San Antonio Creek, you can see that here is the WaterWise Community Center. So this is not a part of our camp. It's not one of the stops. However, this is our headquarters. And right here is where we have our community garden. Now, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it is currently closed, but we do have a wilderness park. And that wilderness park is open to the public. If you ever want to get outside and go have a picnic or whatever you would like, we do have a lot of trees there. And it's just nice to go there for a little walk just to get out of the house. I'm going to continue to follow San Antonio Creek down, down, down until we get to our next stop, which is the Chino Creek Wetlands and Education Park. Now, this area is very important because this is an inland wetland. You don't really see many of these, and so this is a very important area. As you can see, it is very green. I'm going to zoom out here so you can see the difference between this area and the rest of the map. This area is very green compared to what we are seeing around it. So what that means is that there's a lot of water. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be turning off this layer right here, which is the layer that represents the Santa Ana River. So I'm going to turn that off right now so that we can see. This is, again, the Chino Creek Wetlands and Education Preserve. It's very important. There's a lot of water here, and there are a lot of plants and a lot of animals that rely on this space, rely on this area to survive. And I'm going to show you here the Prado Dam. This is an earthen dam that keeps this water here and is actually here for flood control. This prevents the Santa Ana River from flooding and also protects the homes along the Santa Ana River from flooding. And another thing that is really important about the Prado Dam is that not only does it keep the Chino Creek Wetlands and Educational Park alive, as you can see by all of this green, the water that is stored here also serves as a groundwater recharge area. So groundwater is water that you find in the ground, and groundwater is very important for our area. Half of the water that we drink comes from groundwater. So this space is very important because it refills our groundwater. Whenever we take water out of the ground, we need to put some back so that we have enough water to use for drinking, for showering, for washing our hands, whatever it is that we use water for. Groundwater is very important because that's what we use it for. So I'm going to turn on the Santa Ana River layer again. And we are going to follow the Santa Ana River to our final destination, which is, can you guess? Let's see, Huntington Beach. Now remember earlier I said that water in a watershed always wants to go to the lowest point in the watershed. In the Santa Ana River watershed, the lowest point is here at the ocean. So I'm going to take off this layer again for the Santa Ana River, and I'm going to zoom in on the channel. Now, as you can see, the Santa Ana River has a concrete channel. And what this means is that humans actually laid down the concrete and force the water to go in a specific direction. And this is the case because if you look around, what do we have here? We have houses, we have businesses. It is this, let me see. This is the Orange County Sanitation District. So the concrete channel is very important to keep these areas surrounding it from flooding. And in a natural river channel, you wouldn't have this. You would have an earthen channel, and the river, the water would move and flow so that it could follow the fastest path to its lowest point. Now, humans didn't want that. Why? Again, because of flooding. There are people who live along the Santa Ana River, and if it had an earthen natural channel, then we would have a lot of issues here. So as we go down the channel, as we go downstream, we can see that at some point we start getting maybe some vegetation, right? But it's still a concrete channel. And then we start to see some water. So right here to the left-hand side, what we have, again, is the Orange County Sanitation Department. And this is important because this sanitation department, what they do is they take wastewater and they clean it just enough, not to the point where we can drink it, but to where it can be released out into the ocean. So this water that we are seeing right here is coming from Orange County Sanitation. You can see right here these holes kind of in the concrete, and that's where the water comes out from. So we're going to follow the Santa Ana River down, down, down until we get here to our ultimate exit, which is the ocean. All of the water that comes down through the Santa Ana River exits here at Newport Beach in the Pacific Ocean. Now, this can be water that comes from all of the other streams, or it can even be the water that comes from OC Sanitation. So this is our watershed. And you actually traveled, if you went to all of the spots, you traveled a very long distance. So you can see that the watershed is pretty big. I mean, look at this. Here's Chino, here's Ontario, here's Pomona, here's Rancho Cucamonga, right? So there are a lot of cities within this watershed. There are a lot of people and animals and insects that rely on the water in the Santa Ana River watershed. And so that is why it is very important that we are watershed stewards, because whatever we do upstream, whatever we do up here is going to affect what happens downstream, down here. So we should always clean up our trash. We should always be mindful of what we are doing, because what we do where we live in our communities will ultimately affect everything that happens downstream and in the ocean. So with that, thank you so much for joining me for this virtual tour. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining us for camp at the WaterWise Community Center.